Welcome back to the Life on Earth channel. Hope you all are doing well today. We're going to be jumping into another one of our watches. Today we're going to be looking at a really beautiful Zenith from 1936. The watch is so much more than sort of the stainless steel tank-shaped watch that you probably would look at and say, looks like a fairly simple watch. It has some unique features that I think make it quite a nice piece. But I think it's also the history that this watch carries that adds a lot of value to the piece. And so I am excited to jump into this, give you some close-ups of the watch, and also talk through the history and the significance of this piece, and really the significance and history of where it fits into what happened in the world during this time. So without further ado, let's jump into this piece. Zenith are known for many accolades throughout their history. Not only did they produce some of the best chronograph movements in watchmaking history, they've captured the attention of many collectors during their lifetime. It is special to be able to see the breadth and abilities of a brand manifest in a single watch, and that certainly is the watch that we're going to be covering today. So a little history about Zenith I think will be useful as we discuss this piece. So Zenith was founded in 1865 by Georges Favre-Jacot in Locle, Neuchâtel, which is in Switzerland, and is best known for being one of the oldest continuously operating watchmakers in the world. Believe it or not, Favre-Jacot is known for really starting the concept of in-house watch movements, and this is a good example of that today. He believed that to produce watches of the highest quality, one had to control their entire production process. Favre-Jacot was only 22 at the time, and so if you want to know about someone speaking about wisdom, I think this is a good example. Just 35 years after being founded, Zenith ended up participating in the 1900, that's the date 1900, Paris Universal Exhibition, where they won their first award for chronometry. They continued to innovate throughout the 1900s, winning top awards like the Neuchâtel Observatory prizes with their caliber 135 5 years in a row from 1950 to 1954. Part of this journey to modern watchmaking for Zenith was the fact that Zenith, like many other brands, did not produce a single style of watch. They too experimented with different designs of cases. This watch features a stainless steel rectangular case, as you can see. Zenith did produce many rectangular cased watches throughout its history, and many of them were on the smaller side, so they were typically marketed towards women, marketed and sold to women in this shape. But these watches were actually some of the first rectangular cased watches that Zenith produced that were really marketed towards men. What you can see is, if you look at this from a profile angle, you can see that the watch has this slope style case where the lugs angle towards the wearer's wrist. You can also see that the case overall is slightly curved. So overall the watch sort of hugs the wrist just slightly. The watch does have fixed spring bars, which you can see on the back here, which was something more common in the 1920s and 30s than it is today. One of the unique features about this watch is really its dial. The dial features a very sharp sector dial with a minute track that circles the outside of the watch. Inside the minutes track are hour markers that still retain much of the luminescent material from that were originally applied. There are some parts of this watch where there might be indications that the lume has been redone, specifically these bottom 2 hour markers here. The hour markers have faded at the top here to this sort of darker brown color that gives the watch an overall nice look. At 6 o'clock, you see, and I should probably wind it for you so you can see it running. At 6 o'clock, the dial has a second subdial with a very similar outside track that marks the 60 seconds in a minute. If I give the watch a little bit of light, what you'll notice is that the blue steeled hands that show the hour and minute still retain much of the luminescent material and are blue steeled finished, giving it a really attractive look to these hour indices. The watch has an unsigned crown, which is very common for this era, so whether it's original or not is up for debate. However, I do think that it does go with the watch model. The crystal does have a slight crack, which you can see at 11 o'clock there. The case does show signs of wear, as you would expect from a watch that's almost 100 years old. You can see some scratches on the dial here, obviously some rubbing on the outside of the case, and maybe on the side there you can see some of the age that the watch is showing. Overall, I still think though that the sector dial oops, I apologize for the focus. The sector dial, the fixed spring bars, and the aging on this watch gives it quite a military feel. And so the wear on the watch really matches the aesthetic of this specific piece. The beating heart of this incredible watch is the caliber 8 3/4 F movement. Based on advertisements as well as historical sales of these movements, the movement appears to have been introduced in the 1930s. The serial number on the movement does point to this piece being manufactured in 1936. Records do show that the 8 3/4 F and the 8 3/4 NSI movements were produced from 1921 to 1955, and that 40,200 movements were produced. The movement in this watch has a tonneau shape and has a nickel tone finish to it. The Zenith also produced this movement with just the plain stainless steel finish to it. The 8 3/4 NSI movement was the same movement, however, it was in a round shape as opposed to the tonneau shape, and the movement was used in round cased pieces. There's an advertisement that we have on the article on our website that shows this movement in some of its different forms, and so I highly recommend you check that out. The name 8 3/4 actually is the measurement of the movement in lines, which is the measurement scheme that is used when speaking about watch movements. When you flip a watch over and look at its case back to see if there are any more details about the life of the watch, it's really one of the most exciting things to do. With this piece, obviously, you have to take the strap off, and then what you see is a really interesting case engraving. So the stainless steel case back of this watch has a dedication to, and I apologize for my pronunciation, Upomika na Rodiči, 1937. This likely is Slovak for in memory from the parents, 1937. Now, the reason why I'm almost sure about this is on the video where we covered this as part of one of the 4 pieces that we were going to cover on this channel a few weeks ago, someone confirmed that this was the translation. Now, it's really extremely important to note that European history comes into play to understand the history of this specific watch. Eastern Europe was impacted heavily by World War I and World War II. In 1918, Czechoslovakia was declared independent from Austria-Hungary following World War I, forming their own country. During that time, they were a democratic Republic, and the capital was Prague. They spoke Czechoslovak, which is likely the language that this caseback engraving is in. Then, in 1938, following the Munich Agreement, part of the country became part of Nazi Germany and did not exist because of the occupation between 1939 and 1945. Once the war ended, Slovakia became independent once again, but some of the parts of the country became part of the Ukraine SSR. Now, where exactly this watch was during that time is unknown. Where this watch was sourced was very far from where exactly that was. But the inscription on the caseback could point to it being sold and gifted right in the heart of Czechoslovakia during one of the worst times in the history of humanity. It was also a gift from parents to what was likely their son or daughter, and what happened to those individuals during World War II is also unknown, and whether they were together, separated, or impacted by the war is unknown. But in a unique way, the watch also carries the weight of what could have happened to them and what happened to so many others during that time in Europe. Now, the watch is a tank-style watch, so it does sit smaller on the wrist. It's from the 1930s, so this was very typical of this era. But overall, I think it has a very nice look to it, and is a very cool-looking Zenith that is really a pleasure to look down on the wrist. I can see how having fixed spring bars can be frustrating, but again, the sort of military aesthetic that this watch has does sort of fit with that sort of idea. I think it's also, there are some companies who do make these sort of one strap cases, and so it's not like you won't be able to find some sort of strap that can go with this watch. So in conclusion, watches are beautiful. I don't think you'd be watching this video or reading our article about this watch if you disagreed with that point. I think this Zenith is a good example of a watch that is beautiful to look at. It feels incredible to have on the wrist, and has a personality about it when you do have it on the wrist. The sector dial is a wonder to look down at when it's on your wrist, but I think what is unique about this watch is how a simple engraving that's on the caseback of this watch could point to an incredible amount of significant history. Europe changing over 50 years of a war in a region of constant change, and could point to the relationships between parents and children, and I think those added details for this watch are what make it so unique and interesting to have on the wrist. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this Zenith from 1936 with the caliber 8 3/4 F movement. As I mentioned in the video, this watch was in Europe, in Eastern Europe, likely in Eastern Europe. I don't know definitively, so I'll say likely in Eastern Europe during a time of incredible turmoil, probably one of the most significant parts of the history of humanity. And it's quite interesting to think about the person who owned this watch, the parents who gifted this piece to their son or daughter, and also to think of this watch and what it was doing during World War II. Was it sitting on someone's wrist? Were they wearing it around Europe? And during all this controversy, was it just sitting in someone's home or in rubble while the war was going on? Was the movement beating during this incredible time of history in Europe? It's just interesting things to think about. Whatever you may think, when you put that type of mindset on, you think about this watch when it's on your wrist and how much significance it could hold. I do think it just adds a whole nother layer of interest to this piece, and I think that's why I find it very, very interesting as a watch and the history of Zenith, but also the watch and the history of just humanity in general. So I hope you enjoyed this story about this piece. If you want to see more information about this watch, be sure to go over to lifeandtherest.com and go to the editorial section of the website, and you can read more about this. I did mention an advertisement for these pieces that's on our article, so you can go there and check that out. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this piece. I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially given its unique look and also its unique part of history. If you are new to Life on the Wrist, be sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with a friend who might be interested in watches. If you wouldn't mind liking this video, it really does help me out. With that said, guys, stay tuned for our next video. I think we're going to cover, might be the watch on my wrist. I will not tell you what it is, but you can probably go back in this video and you'll see what watch we'll be covering. So stay tuned for that. I'm looking forward to jumping into it with you. With that said, thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time.